What a powerful verse that is, and a powerful video to remind us of why we're here today. Those of you in the room and those of you at home, would you join me in welcoming Keith Draper and Neelab Malik, both from World Relief? Well, guys, thank you for being with us this morning. I appreciate you braving the weather and coming out. And so, Keith, let me start with you. Just kind of tell us, you've been here many times, and so many of our folks know, but what you do at World Relief, and not just your title, but what is beyond that, because I know you do more than your title says. So.
Yeah, I serve on our leadership team, so really helping as a group of people make decisions for our work across the whole region, the Chicagoland area. We have 3 offices, one on the north side in Albany Park, one in Carroll Stream, and then a third one out here in Aurora. And really the primary work that I do beyond our leadership team is really building bridges with churches. So we have a base of almost 400 churches in the Chicagoland area that partner with us, and 50 of those joined since things happened with Afghanistan. So it's been a time where churches really have been responding, thinking, what could we do about this situation, and how could we be of help?
That's awesome. You and I have known each other for 30-plus years in the Chicagoland area.
I don't think we were single in those days, but it was pretty close to that.
Yeah, it felt like that, right? And you've done such a great job, whatever role you've played, but especially at World Relief, of helping make that bridge to the local church that sometimes doesn't always know the best ways to help, especially those who are here in our country for all kinds of reasons that they didn't choose on their own.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Neelab, thank you for being with us as well. Tell us what your title is and what you actually do. I know there's always more to that at World Relief.
So I'm an Afghan caseworker,
okay,
and I help with the process of resettlement. I started back in October, and I love my job.
Awesome.
So when the Afghans come, we go visit them the next day. We talk about what World Relief is about and how World Relief helped them out with the resettlement process. So yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome. Well, that kind of segues into about you, because you and I had a conversation this week by phone, and Keith has told me a lot about you. So you actually grew up in Afghanistan, is that correct?
That is correct.
So because most of us don't know the territory of Afghanistan, can you kind of tell us where you grew up and maybe highlight maybe a major town that we might have heard of in the news and where you were?
So I grew up in Kabul, which is the capital.
All right.
And it's also called the heart of Afghanistan. I grew up in a little city called Khair Khana. And that's where basically, there are like different tribes of Afghani people.
Okay.
So I am known as like people who speak Dari only. They're known as Tajik people.
Okay.
And then people who live in the tribal area, they're like called Pashtun people.
Okay.
So I'm known like amongst the Tajik people.
Okay. So tell us a little bit, because again, we get our news sources here in America and we hear about a faraway place like Afghanistan, but to meet someone from there, what was it like growing up in Afghanistan for you? And then even beyond that, what was it like growing up as a girl in Afghanistan? Tell us about that.
So before all the war and stuff happened in Afghanistan, Afghanistan was a beautiful country, very moderate. Men, women, they were allowed to go to school, college, and the equality was a thing in Afghanistan.
Okay.
They would work just side by side. When I was born, obviously everybody knows here that Taliban have been in Afghanistan for many, many, many years. So growing up in that kind of environment, I was not allowed to go to school, so I was being homeschooled by my mom. And I was not allowed to go out in the open, play just like any other girl in Afghanistan, and not having that fear of, oh my God, Taliban is gonna come get me now, or take me away, or capture me. Because when Taliban took over, girls, women in general, they were not allowed to leave their houses. They were supposed to stay home, no school, no work, no job. You were kind of like living in a fear of how am I going to make my day by day type of thing? Like what's going to happen tomorrow? Am I going to be alive? Because Taliban are known to like come in your houses, and they see like you have a beautiful girl, they would just say, hey, I'm here to take your girl and marry your girl. And you can't say no to that. If you say no, then you're shot.
Wow. So prior to the Taliban taking control like you described, that was not the life. And then once they took power, then you yourself and many of your friends, I assume, who were girls, lived under that kind of fear.
That kind of a fear, yes.
Yeah. That must have been hard for your mom and dad as well.
Very hard, very
Yeah.
hard. And my dad is not alive because he was taken away by Taliban.
Sorry to hear that.
So yeah, it was really hard. Living a life like that, growing up, being a young adult, it really affects you.
Well, then I know that you came here, you immigrated to the U.S. in 2001, correct? So tell us about what led to you coming here and what transpired, how you got here. Tell us a little bit about that story.
So to fly away from Afghanistan, from all that kind of a problem, we went to Pakistan, and we lived in Pakistan for a year. Again, we saw many difficulties there too, because not having a man in the house who can support you, like my dad, it was really difficult for my mom to support me and my siblings. But there were times that we didn't even have food on our table to eat. So,
let me ask you this. I know that's emotional for you. When you went to Pakistan, because I'm not familiar, right? Most of us aren't. Was there a prejudice against Afghan people as well? Did you face that as a part of that as well?
yes.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So you went there, you stayed there for how long in Pakistan with your mom?
So we
and
were in
siblings?
Pakistan for a year,
Okay.
and so sorry. It was really hard. So again, Pakistan is a country not very moderate, and we were kind of like in a tribal area,
Wow.
and it was difficult finding food for my mom. My mom had to like do tailoring to provide food for us, and it was a really difficult time. And then knowing that, then there's like a American embassy in Pakistan. So when we heard about that, instantly my mom went and tried to apply for that, for us to come here. And thankfully we were accepted. And the moment that we heard the news, we were so excited.
I can imagine.
I mean, living in Pakistan, Afghanistan, you can only imagine what America will be like. It's like your dream. Oh my God, I cannot believe I'm going to America.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It was amazing.
So I guess for all of us here in this room and all of us watching online, there may be some confusion that we have. So maybe you can help clear this up. Right after 9/11, which is right after you came, I assume.
Yes.
There was a feeling in America by some that all people who are from that area are out to get Americans, right? And they're suspect.
Yes.
And yet, you described, when you heard the news you were coming to America, as, wow, this is awesome. So that is not necessarily how everyone feels, that America is the terrible country. There are many, many people. Describe that for us.
Yes. So anyway, like when you live in a country like Afghanistan and Pakistan, where women are looked down upon, and there's no freedom, there's no equality for women, then you hear about a country like America, where like I personally feel like sky's the limit. You can be anything you want to. It's just with the, just have to have the determination you want to do it. So when you hear about a country like that, everybody dreams that, oh my God. I mean, everybody in this room, they all want to be something, do something in their life.
Right.
So I was one of them. I wanted to have a better education. I wanted to be able to go to school. I want to be free just like everybody else. So when I heard that we were accepted, and it's so amazing because our caseworker was American, and we were accepted actually in 4 countries, London, America, Australia, and Canada. And so when she asked us, she was like, where do you guys want to go? I was like, we didn't know any English, so our translator was there, and I was like, I don't know, America maybe? She was like, well, I am American, and I'm going to send you guys to my country.
That's fantastic.
So we were like so happy. And then when 9/11 happened, we were actually in Pakistan. We saw on the TV. I felt again like my dream shattered. I
Wow.
was like, oh my God, okay, we're not going anywhere. It's because the terrorists happen. I don't think America's going to accept us because we're Muslim. They're going to think we're terrorists too. Again, it's because not to be a stereotype, but we didn't know what American people
Right.
had the feelings towards Muslims after 9/11. So yeah, I was like, yeah, that's it, we're done. And then when we got the phone call that, no, okay, you guys are actually going your flight. Oh my God, I was like, I could not believe it. I was like, thank God for like this opportunity.
So tell us, what age were you when that happened? How old were you?
So I was 15.
15. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's fast forward a little bit. So you get to America,
Yes.
and you end up going to a school. It would be high school at that point.
Yes.
So I know there's a story here, so I want you to tell that story. So tell us about what happened in high school for you, at least one occasion.
Oh my goodness. So when I came to high school, I did not know any English. So I instantly they put me in ESL classes because I need to learn the English. I entered the classroom, one of my ESL classes. I saw like everybody was sitting on one side of the room. I was sitting on this side. I was very segregated. Nobody wanted to talk to me. Nobody wanted to welcome me. In my mind, I'm like, why is that what's going on? You know, maybe I am new. Maybe they don't want to talk to me because of that. But then later on, once they got to know me, they actually told me the truth. They said, well, because you were from Afghanistan, prior to you coming in, one of the ESL teacher went to all the ESL classes and said, there's this girl coming from Afghanistan. And as soon as she said she's coming from Afghanistan, everyone was like, no, we should send her back. She doesn't deserve being here. She's a terrorist. So we didn't like you because we thought you were a terrorist. And I, just like that, I faced many, like, prejudice type of comments towards me when I was in high school. But I felt like with everybody, I had to go around and say, I had to prove myself that no, I'm not a terrorist. I am not related with Osama bin Laden. He's not even from Afghanistan.
Right, exactly.
Why are you telling me that I'm related with Osama bin Laden?
You had to school the very people that are teaching you that.
Yes. But once they got to know me, then they had no problem with me.
Yeah.
So.
That's a remarkable story. I think it reminds us as Americans, as Christians for sure, and you're a Muslim, but as Christians, how to treat people. We're reminded in our scripture that we're to love people, and that hasn't anything to do with where they come from. That love is universal, and so a great reminder for us. So let me fast forward a little here, and Keith, I'm going to let you jump in here in a second. So here we are faced again, as of last year, with a pullout from Afghanistan. And just to kind of get us all on the same page, I want you to watch this video clip. Watch this.
And I also urge all countries to be willing to receive Afghan refugees and refrain from any deportations. The world is watching. We cannot and must not abandon the people of Afghanistan.
We're just going to bring you these live and exclusive pictures here from inside the presidential palace. What you are looking at right now is Taliban fighters inside the presidential palace. This is these pictures exclusive on Al Jazeera. We've been watching them for a few moments now, milling around the lush environs of the presidential palace.
So that happened last August. Just not a political question, right? It's not political, but from a person from Afghanistan. That I assume when you see that footage, that has to break your heart to see.
Yeah. Yes, it does, because again, I consider myself a tough cookie. I don't cry easily. But when something like that touches your heart, or you know what you've gone through in the past, it's hard to like hold down that tears.
Yeah, and to see from the idea of the Taliban being restricted and girls being allowed to go to school, and then to see that happen. And again, for all of us in the room and those watching, this isn't a political statement. It's the reality of human life and what happens. And the politics of it all are way above my pay grade. But we know that individuals from Afghanistan were affected by all of that.
Greatly.
And, crazy stuff happened. So that brings me to you, Keith. I know that World Relief has a special connection here to those who have fled or trying to flee from Afghanistan. Tell us about that, and I think it's important for us to hear the story here of what's going on.
Yeah, we actually have a 20-year history of relationship with that country. So we have been resettling people from Afghanistan for 20 years now. And as soon as these kinds of reports were coming out, we were quickly contacted as one of the 9 agencies that the U.S. government works with on resettlement to see what we could do to connect with families here in the area we had resettled to help get their families on those transport planes. And when that happened, within 4 days, we had 1,000 people's names added to the list from here in Chicagoland trying to get families out. And, you know, I find particularly the joy of what we do, because when you think about all 9 agencies, 5 of those 9 agencies are Christian in nature. So really the majority of all resettlement work that's done in the United States is done by Christian organizations that love their neighbor and want to do something to help out. So we quickly had people arriving primarily at 3 military bases in the United States. And we, again, got a phone call to ask if we would help with some of the processing of families that would be arriving. And so we sent a team from our local office here to help out at one of those bases. And basically when people arrived on those transport planes, everyone who was there would go out on the tarmac to greet the plane and applaud everyone that was coming off.
Wow.
You're going to make me cry. And they would applaud us for thinking enough of them to want to get them out of their countries. And so that went on for 12, 13-hour shifts for about 3 weeks. There was an outbreak of chicken pox in the middle of that delayed everything about 3 weeks. And so we then began receiving. But we had some secondary trauma as well, because those families that had family ties here locally started contacting us directly from Kabul and other locations.
So I want to make sure we have a clear picture of this, okay? So when they get off those transport planes, they don't have 4 suitcases and 3 checked bags. And what do they arrive with? Because they left everything behind. What do they arrive with?
Yeah, often through the United Nations, there'll be a little plastic bag, white bag, that has the logo of the United Nations on it. And that plastic bag is what they have. And it's primarily, I mean, we've done some simulations to help people think about this. If you were given less than 24-hour notice to get out of your country, what would you take if you had a plastic bag? And so often it's identifications or things that would help them be able to legitimate the stories that they have, because certainly moving towards citizenship, there's a need to be able to corroborate stories and make sure that everything is accurate and true. So that's what shows up in that bag. So everything else that they receive once they come here is provided by you. I mean, when those apartments are furnished, it's from donated items that you've given. And when those linens are there for their towels or their kitchen goods, those are things that have been donated here. So that's part of how we prepare for families that are coming here.
Nilab, tell us the story. I know you were working with someone trying to get them out of Kabul during that time. Tell us that story. I believe there was a family there.
Yes, so there's a family of 17 who came.
Say that again, a family of
17.
17.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Not my family, but
Close, Keith, close.
So there are 17 people in a family, grandma, grandpa, and then their sons and their sons' wives, and then most of the wives are pregnant now, and then they have grandchildren. So they're currently in a hotel, and it's really hard to secure housing for them because of such a big family they are. So like we're trying our best to make sure that they are actually happy and they have food and because when family are together and they come together, you don't really want to separate them because they left their country behind, their home behind, and then here you try to like separate them. So we're trying very hard. We are trying really hard to secure housing that they can be close to each other, together, to support each other. So we're kind of like having a little bit of a tough time about that because not only for them, for most or almost all evacuees, it's really hard to find housing or secure housing for them because there are people who have no documentation. They come here and without social security number, without anything, it's really hard. And nobody's going to come forward and say, hey, yeah, you can just put this family that I don't even know to my apartment. So that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges we're facing.
I think the other part too, Keith, and you and I talked about this earlier this week. While they don't come with much in the way of identification that satisfies the American government, that whole challenge presents itself to you guys as well because they have to be vetted. Talk about, I think the news media sometimes, depending on what you watch, what you hear, it could seem, whatever political spectrum you're on, that these people are just coming in and we don't know what's going on. That's not true. Tell us about what happens there.
Yeah, there's different categories of arrivals. Certainly as a refugee, there's normally a very involved vetting process that's 24 to 30 months in length. Laser eye scans, interviews, documents that are involved in that. And once that's done on the front end, it has to be done on the right end. They have to clear their medical clearances. That's probably one of the most involved. But we have a couple other categories at work here right now, particularly with Afghanistan. One is special immigrant visas, and I hope I'm not getting too much in the weeds here with all the categories, but these would be people who've served our American troops and served our government in Afghanistan. So they're coming here really having already completed all of those clearances that they had to be able to serve our country. So that makes the process a little more expedited. A third category, too, that has happened was what we would call parolees. Let me just say the worst possible name that you could call a group of people coming here. These aren't coming from prisons. They're not people that have been freeing from the jails. They're people who've come here basically to work through that kind of paperwork when they arrive. So any way to help them get here, similar to seeking asylum, to help them work through approvals to be in this country. But if they've left the country, in a sense, you see them having left what they grew up with, what their life was. And to start all of that over again is not an easy process. And the processing that happened at those Air Force bases was to begin working through that. Their status as parolee also means that they don't have a permanent status right now. They're not on their way to citizenship yet. They had to just get them out of the country. The decision now is, will they be able to apply for citizenship in this country? So those are just some of those categories. So, yeah.
Nilab, jump in here because I would suspect there is a grieving process that goes on with someone who leaves their home country, as bad or as good as it may be, but leaves and comes here. How is your story that we heard similar to what's happening with the Afghan refugees that are coming now? And how is it different? Tell us about that.
So all these evacuees that I meet in person, the first thing that they say, oh, we had houses back home, we had food on the table, we had each other, we left everything behind and we came here. So that instantly brings me back to my experience, what I went through, because it's the same, similar. The only difference is that I came as a refugee. Like Keith said, it's a long process. You're well known that a person is coming or a family is coming. That's the only difference. But going back, that's why I get so emotional, because I've been in their shoes. I've lived that. I know how hard it is not knowing a language. Oh my goodness, I didn't know any language when I came here. It was so hard. My mean of communication with my host family was drawing on the piece of paper. If I needed something, I would draw. I need this. So it's really hard. And back then, I didn't know any Afghan when I came. So it was really hard for me to get around to basically build a life from ground zero. So all of them, when they come here, they're basically building their lives from ground zero. They're starting from ground zero. So when I go to their houses, you can see the pain, the sorrow in their eyes. Like they left their entire life behind, and they just started and packed just to fly away from all the chaos that's going on in Afghanistan. So it's really hard. It's heartbreaking.
I think, go ahead, Keith.
Let me interject something, because I think there's the story of the similarities, dissimilarities, but also I don't want us to quickly skirt beyond the secondary trauma of that, like meeting these families and that drawing her back to her experiences of that. And that's been one of the challenges with staff right now, is, as I mentioned, when there were families basically calling us directly from Afghanistan saying, you know, we want to get on a transport plane and we can't get into the airport. We had one family that had 7 children, and they were basically hiding out behind a restaurant in a dumpster trying to get out, waiting for the opportune moment. And I had come to the office and someone was sharing the story with me, and she began to weep, and just feeling the pain of that family trying to get their children out of the country. We had another family that had been there actually vacationing with their family, and got stranded there, and they had a 9-year-old daughter, and they basically told our staff, we don't know what our daughter's life is going to be like if we don't get out of this country right now. And so I don't want to make that any greater than the challenges that people have that are coming here, but it's also hard on the staff hearing these stories to try to process and want to help as best we can.
Absolutely. And you know, I think it's so important. What you've shared is so important for us, because I think growing up in America, right, and I'm born here, it's easy to assume that this is just what everybody has. And we don't have any idea of what it feels like to leave everything behind and come to something new.
But Jesus did.
Jesus did. You're exactly
He left
right.
everything behind
Exactly.
to come be here with us.
Philippians tells us that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Powerful. Well, let me transition here, because I think this is where Springbrook comes in and where we all come in. So both of you can answer this question. Knowing what you know and the little bit we now understand, what can we do? How can we help these folks? What are some ways that we can make a difference in the lives of people who are here? They may have wanted to be here. Maybe it was the last resort for them. Or maybe they really always dreamed of coming here like you may have. What can we do practically for them?
I'm going to start, and then Nilab, if you want to add to that. I've used the acronym GAPS, G-A-P-S, to think about how people might be involved. Certainly GAPS, thinking the letter G is giving. You know, what ways might you collect things that are needed for that apartment? Or if you wanted to give financially toward the work, those are certainly ways of helping us. We were not anticipating receiving what has now been 250 arrivals from Afghanistan. That was not in our plan, and those costs are costs that we're having to incur for every family that's arriving right now. The second, I would say, is advocacy. You know, we think of that term maybe in terms of being political or even legal in nature, but you know, really Jesus is our advocate before God. And so advocacy is a good word, and it's saying basically speak on behalf of these people. If you think about a people who basically are coming here with nothing, then how can we help? And if they don't have any path yet to citizenship, can we encourage some way to get toward that? So advocacy is one way of certainly doing it. The third is prayer. I can't tell you how much we have felt the prayers of so many people for those who are coming, thinking about their needs, praying for housing, which is a huge item right now, finding housing for families that would be rental or what other. And then finally is serving, the S of GAPS, serving. There are ways to really have a lot of time with the people that we serve and become friendship partners or a good neighbor team from a small group. But you could also do things like picking people up at the airport or setting up the apartment or helping with getting them to medical appointments. There's some really practical things, and those are even opportunities that are pooling opportunities, meaning you go on a list and we send you an email, and if you can help, yes. If no, that's fine too, and it may be a year before you do that again. So you don't have to feel like you're signing your life away, that I'm going to do something every week and spend time. If you can't do that, we certainly have those needs as well. So those are just some really practical ways of thinking about filling the gaps with the needs.
And the last one that you mentioned, serving, I think we often feel this way, at least I know I do, and I'm going to speak for everybody in the room and watching. If I go pick up somebody to take them to the doctor and they have a different language and all of that, it's going to be awkward in the car, right?
Yeah.
It may be, but it's awkward for that person as well. And they need somebody to get over their awkwardness and love them in spite of it, right?
My first experience doing that, because when I came on, though my role was with our admin and really with church relations, they wanted me shadowing everything. They wanted me to understand how this all works. So I remember going to the airport to pick up a family from the Congo, the DRC. So we get there, and I see these people coming out with their little bags of what they have. And I greeted them. I had others with me there greeting them, and they were just so happy that someone knew their name arriving at this giant airport,
Right.
And when we got them out to the van, we thanked them. We got them onto the van with what they had. And when we arrived, they were arriving into Aurora. We came into an apartment that had been furnished. We walked through the space and said, here's the switches that turn the electricity on. Here's how the plumbing works for starting things. And then I looked out the window, and there was a steeple of a church right across the street from the space. And I said, just so you know, in this country, there are some churches that have steeples on top of them, and that's a church that does. And I left there praying with them, praying that they would be established, that they would get off to a good beginning. And I went to a pastor's lunch, and I met the guy who was the pastor of the church across the street.
Wow.
And I said to him, this family has just arrived. If you would reach out to them, I know they'd be happy to receive people. They, immediately mobilized just to come over and say hello. And we now still connect with that family. And I've met the pastor since then, and he's like, that family is the most faithful family in our church. They come every time the doors are open. Wow. They're so grateful. And it was just a beautiful thing to even show how just very naturally that all took place.
Right. And simple things, like you said, how a light switch works, how plumbing works, the things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
Elab, help us. Being from Afghanistan, arriving here as a 15-year-old, and now being here a while, what can we do to help people that are arriving from Afghanistan? From where you sit, what does that look like for us?
So I think Keith covered most of it, but to me personally, I'm going to take a different approach.
Sure.
Please.
So when you meet them, or just to really try to be compassionate towards them, try to make them feel welcome, and because again, going back when I came and how I was treated and how I was welcomed was way left some scars, and I don't want any other Afghan going through that.
Absolutely.
Because all of us, we're human beings first.
That's right.
And then everybody has their own beliefs, and in Islam, we are taught to respect all beliefs, all religions. And that's why I'm here. And even when I was with my host family, we lived for 25 days with them. They were
Right.
Protestant,
Right.
and I respected their religion. I attended their ceremonies. So I want everybody to really just be kind and treating them with respect, and be compassionate towards them. They have left everything behind. They have a lot of pain and sorrow. They might not show it, and that's another thing about Afghans. They don't show it. We're very hospitable. Anybody who comes to our house, even if we don't have food for ourselves, we would love to share with everybody else. That's what Afghans do. So just try to be loving, caring, respectful, and not to think that, oh, they're a different religion, because again, in my mind, I always remind myself we're human beings first, and then comes religion.
I think that's such a great word, because I think as a church, as Christ followers, we can be guilty at times of trying to proselytize and tell someone to believe something else, when in reality, much like in Islam, for Christianity, it's to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
And when that builds a bridge, we have to trust God to do what God wants to do.
Yes.
But you're exactly right. Well, all this leads to something. On February 13th, Springbrook is going to do something we've never done before. It's called Gather and Go. And on that Sunday at 10:30, won't even be a service. We'll gather here at 10:30, birth through adults. And as a part of that Gather and Go, gathering here in this room, we're going to go and make a difference and partner with World Relief to do that. And on the screen, you're going to see some things that we're going to do. One, we're going to set up Afghan refugee homes with basic necessities and supplies. So let me tell you what's already been happening. Late last year, there were some people at Springbrook who knew some people who were moving, and they didn't want to sell their furniture. They just wanted to sit it out somewhere or give it away. And I said to those involved, let's take that furniture and rent a storage facility and have that furniture, because Gather and Go is coming. It's good furniture. So already we're collecting supplies for that. Impact, as you know, our 5-year campaign to raise $250,000 over 5 years for mission enterprises right here as well. We're way over the goal of that $250. Some of that money will be used to make that happen. So on that Sunday, some of you will be going with World Relief to set up those homes. How cool is that, that you're going to meet those people? You won't know their language. They may know yours better, ours better, right? But just the amount of love that we show, that's the bridge. The second thing, some of you who are very good at organizing, if you've ever been to World Relief and seen their warehouse, you know they need some people who have the gift of organization. They get so many donations
every day.
Every day. That the staff is trying to help people. And so some of you who say, well, I don't know that I want to go to someone's home and help them set up that. I feel like I can do this better. Some of you will be going to help organize a warehouse that will help World Relief do what they do even better. And then thirdly, some of you are going to go meet with a local church of Christ followers that were persecuted Christians in their own country and experience their worship service. You may not understand their language, but you'll understand what they believe by just experiencing that with them. So that's on February the 13th. February 14th, Valentine's Day. February 13th, we're going to go show love. And so we're going to meet here. So I want you to plan now, regardless, those of you watching online, join us that day. Let's make a difference. I want to show you one verse here on the screen. Keith turned me on to this verse so many times. Keith, I'm going to let you say it because you just say it from scratch. Say that for us real quick.
From one man God made all nations of men and appointed the times and places that they live, so that they might seek him and others might find him, though he's not very far from any one of us. And the picture is that God places people where they are so that they will know him better. And so when we think about people who have been displaced, which happens in this world, there are 85 million people, 1 every 2 seconds, being displaced somewhere in the world. God's moving people around a lot right now. And I believe that he's moving people around so they'll know him better and be better acquainted. I love when we were receiving people from Syria several years ago. We had the New York Times come in and did an article with us that became Easter morning front page news in New York City about welcoming people from Syria, and we were welcoming them to Aurora, and in coming there, that news went out, and so there was a desire for a public hearing about it. And so we brought people together, we met at the public library, and we just asked 3 very simple questions of the people that we were receiving. One was, what was surprising to you about coming to this country? And I remember one man saying through a translator, he had been an SIV, so he had served our country there. He said, how loving and kind all the people are that I'm meeting. Now, who was he meeting? He was meeting Christ followers, and it was transforming his view of who he thought Americans were, who he thought Christians were. So we can either confirm what people think, or we can dispel it by our actions.
So true.
And it's our word and our deeds that make that kind of difference.
It's fantastic. Well, Keith and Nilab, I think you knew this too. Back in December, we decided at Springbrook that we wanted to create a GoFundMe page to help defray the cost of Afghan refugees and their home here in America, in this area. And so this is a check from Springbrook and many friends of Springbrook to World Relief for $16,321.75. And
Thank
so
you.
you
Thank
can
you.
applaud.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all.
much.
Thank you.
We know that's going to go a long way in helping, and that comes from many friends of Springbrook through GoFundMe, and then what we're going to do on February 13th. So I just want to pause and pray for both of you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing. And if you like their story, they have a different one at 10:30. No, they don't. They have the same one. And, but you can come back and listen to it again because it's such a powerful story. I'm counting on all of you at Springbrook to be here on February 13th and be a part of Gather and Go. Let me pray. Father, I thank you for Keith and Nilab. I thank you for the stories that they've shared this morning, just the reality of what has happened in Afghanistan. Father, we're so blessed, so privileged to be able to meet Nilab in person. Father, who would have thought, only in your power could you take a young girl all the way from Afghanistan through Pakistan and ultimately to America, and someday to sit on this stage at Springbrook to share the story of what it means to be a refugee and the things that all of us can do to help bridge that gap and all the hurt that they face and all the confusion that is in their hearts, to bridge that gap with your love. And Father, I thank you for the many years of knowing Keith. I thank you for his heart and his compassion for people from all over the world. And I thank you that he leans into Springbrook to help us be better at loving those people. Father, thank you for the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. Thank you for this day. And Father, for those watching online and those in this room who may have yet to experience what it fully means to know that there's a God who loves them, Father, we pray that they would not be foreigners anymore, but they would understand that there's a God who loves them through Jesus Christ, and they might discover him personally. Father, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Would you give Keith and Nilab an applause? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, isn't that powerful? Aren't you glad you weathered the ice and got here this morning? A great, great story and opportunity for us to make a difference. You know, we've been reminded that we can make a difference in the lives of people all over the world who are resettled here. But that doesn't mean that we just worry about those folks only. We also remember that we all have neighbors in need. I received a call late in December from someone at Springbrook who said that a teacher that they worked with had a house fire. It was the mom and their son, and they were without a home. Could Springbrook do something? Well, because of your generosity, we immediately provided $1,000 of immediate relief to help them buy just the basic necessities. Imagine if your house was destroyed, the clothes on your back, everything you need, along with other organizations. Because of your generosity, we help. In fact, look at this verse on the screen from Proverbs 3:27. Don't withhold good from someone who deserves it when it's in your power to do so. That's the message of Springbrook. We don't want to withhold. The money that comes into Springbrook through your gifts is sent out to do great things in this area. So here's the deal. Maybe this year, if you put this on the screen for me, maybe this year, if you've been giving nothing, there we go, that today you would consider giving something. There's boxes on the wall. There's giving kiosk in the lobby. You give it our website or our app. How about this second one? If you've been giving something, would you consider giving consistently? Right? Maybe you said, I've been giving something, but I haven't been doing it on a regular basis. And then this next one, if you've been giving consistently, would you consider giving sacrificially? And here's what you heard it today. When you do, Springbrook is partnering with all kinds of organizations to make a difference in real people's lives. Hey, thanks for being here today. Guys, thank you for being here. We'll see you next Sunday. Be careful on your way out. Take care.